Hi everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Meena Venkatesh, and today's topic is going to be on procure to pay process. So without any further delay, let's get started. Now, what is P2P process? So P2P process is a sequence of activities that contains right from raising the request for purchasing the raw materials till the time of making payments to the vendors. We call this entire sequence of activities or a cycle of activities as P2P cycle or procure to pay cycle. Now let's quickly look into what are the sequence of activities that form part of P2P process. Step number 1 is understanding the requirement of the raw materials. That is, let us say that ABC Limited is into manufacturing of t-shirts and currently they do not have sufficient raw materials in order to produce these t-shirts. Then in that case, the person who is responsible for raising the purchase request looks into the availability of the raw materials and raises a request for the new set of raw materials that they need in order to produce the output. After a request has been raised, it is usually subject to approval, whereby in the approval process, they look into whether the company actually requires the raw materials and what is the current status of the inventories and so on and so forth. After the purchase requisition has been approved, the step number 2 is identifying the sources. That is, who are the vendors in the market who provide the raw materials that they are looking out for. After they identify a set of vendors, they raise a request for the quotation from the respective vendors that they have selected out of the various vendors in the market. After receiving a quotation, we have the step number 3 where an authority who is responsible for vendor selection is going to look into the various quotations that is received from the selected vendors and they finalize a vendor. So when finalizing the vendor, they look into various aspects like what is the price and what is the quantity and what is the distance or the location of the company and what are the discounts that they are receiving from this particular vendor and so on and so forth. They look into various cost analysis also when selecting a particular vendor for procuring the raw materials. So the step number 3 is selecting the vendor. Next step is, after selecting the vendor, raising a purchase order in the company. That is, requesting the vendor to deliver the required number of raw materials to so and so location. So you raise a purchase order in the name of the vendor and ask them to deliver the raw materials that you need and also mention what is the quantity that you need, what is the price, discounting factors that has been agreed upon, location and other details as well. After this PO is received by the vendor, they start making an arrangements to deliver the raw materials to the location that is mentioned in the PO. And the step number 5 is receiving the goods from the vendors. So in step number 5, the ABC Limited will receive the goods that is ordered from the vendors, and after it has been received, ABC Limited usually raises something called goods receipt note in order to track what is the number of units that they have received in order to verify with the purchase order. So while receiving the goods, there is a matching that is done between purchase order and purchase requisition. So purchase order and purchase requisition, the goods receipt should usually match. After the goods have been received along with the invoice from the vendor, and the next process is the invoice processing. The step number 6 is invoice processing, where they enter the invoices in the systems in order to raise the payable to the vendors. After raising the invoice in step 6, and we have the final step, which is making payment to the vendors within the credit period that is provided by the vendor. So right from the raising request from the raw materials till the time of making payment to the vendors, these entire 7 step is called as P2P cycle or procure to pay process. And most of the organizations who are into the larger quantities of manufacturing, they maintain these sectors very efficiently in order to avoid any kind of inefficiencies in the organization. So this again also forms part of the internal controls of the organization of how this entire sequence of activities are maintained effectively, as P2P process forms a major chunk of activities in the larger manufacturing companies. And I hope this information was really helpful, and if you like my contents, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel. Tada, bye bye, see you all soon.